Hello, everybody. My name is Thomas Fracken. This is the Roundtable Chats podcast, episode 3. I'm very excited to have the guest, Brendan Eappen. He's from Harvard, and he's been doing many exciting things. We met through effective altruism. I was actually just looking back at the original email when I found out about you a year ago, and it was through the Harvard effective altruism community. They said you were looking for a co-founder, and I kind of just responded, and that's how we met. And then we talked in depth last summer, and have been kind of in touch since. But anyways, welcome to the round table. How are you today?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm doing really well. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. Yeah. So, anyways, just to get started, the first question I always ask is, what are you grateful for?
Oh yeah. I mean, so many things, and strongly recommend keeping a gratitude journal if
Yes.
you don't
Yes.
already. I think they're the obvious things and the often said or common things, like the people in my life, my friends, my family, my teachers, my friends, and the people who inspire them. But then there's also kind of these structural things I'm really grateful for. I'm grateful to live in a world that is getting better and better every day. I'm grateful for the personal opportunities I've had to be curious and for that curiosity to guide me towards meaningful pursuits of knowledge, of industry, and yeah, grateful to continue to have the opportunity to roam about this earth and hopefully leave it a little bit better than we found it.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful perspective to have, and I'm glad you brought up gratitude journals because that was something I was looking into recently. I like the blog by Eric Barker where he kind of blends in neuroscience and success things, and one of the biggest thing he's advocated for is the gratitude journal, just to feel better about your life. And when did you start doing that, the gratitude journal?
Yeah, I've done it in different waves of my life, and I admit that I don't adhere every day to the discipline of life logging that I'd love to have. But gratitude journaling was a very easy way to log something of my life, right? To capture what I tried to call a novel or pronounced point of gratitude on a given day. And I had a little booklet, basically a 3x5 sheet of paper times 200, and every day I'd limit myself to just 2 lines. So I really couldn't write more than a sentence. And I had to come up with something that either I had never written about before or was really, really especially pronounced that day, and to give some insight as to why that was important. I started doing that kind of thing several years ago, and I picked it up, put it down. But just having to think outside the box, right? Get beyond the first things that come to mind and into the minutiae of the everyday, whether that's in the grind or in wonderful exploration of the world, that I started really finding value.
Nice.
And it's nice to look back, but it's also nice to reflect.
Yeah, and do you usually do it in the mornings or at night before you go to bed?
For me, I would do it at night before I went to bed.
Nice. Yeah.
It was usually easier to push back sleep the couple of minutes it would take me than to push back getting up, or I'd already pushed back getting up, wasting time on my phone, and then had to actually get out the door.
Right.
And it was nice kind of synthesis to take in the day before I went to sleep. So
yeah, and it
you
must
can do it as well.
definitely. I was just thinking it's and also for people who struggle with sleep, and have insomnia and things like that, having a bedtime routine, and especially one with gratitude. If you are worried about something, that might be a good kind of preventative thing to do, at least to be like, okay, I'm really worried about tomorrow because I have a big test or a big meeting or whatever, but I'm grateful for these things, and you write it down. But in any case, that's a great practice. I definitely want to do that more, the gratitude journaling. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, it's something you can start today.
Yeah, sure.
And you can pick it up tomorrow, and you can continue doing it the next day. And if you forget by next week, that's okay.
Just pick it up.
Week 3, you can start all over again.
Yeah, and that's why I love asking my guests that question first. What are you grateful for? Because it's like no matter where you come from or your socioeconomic status, education status, the country you're born in, it's like everyone has, I think, something to be grateful for. Maybe it takes some longer to find that than others, depending on their condition. But I think it's a super important exercise. So thank you for that. Moving on to the next question. In as many or as few words as you like, what is your life story, Brendan?
My life story.
It's a tough one, but
I mean, Oh boy, I could talk for an hour and you still wouldn't quite get there, and you'd also stop listening. So I better not do that.
Yeah, it's an
But
abbreviated version
no,
for sure.
yeah. I mean, I think that the ultra fast version, or one such
Mhm.
angle on it, is that I really love people,
Yeah, me
and
too.
in person, everyday interactions are stimulating and exciting, and make me wonder about what we're all here for and what we should do with the opportunity we have, just being alive. Uh, and then that sparks me to think a little bit further outside those immediate circles, right? What does the world need? How do we build structures where more people have the kind of opportunities to wonder, or can more easily pursue meaning in their lives?
Mm,
And a lot of that for me is in caregiving, and removing the barriers of illness that people face,
absolutely.
that prevent them from doing what they'd love to do with their lives.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. I mean, yeah, just having human connections and things like I was just reminded, like for me, and maybe it's the same with you, like I love talking to Uber drivers,
Mm.
especially in Washington, D.C., where I went to school, because it's like they're all immigrants and they all have these fascinating stories. And you have this pocket of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I always go deep with them, on what's
Yeah.
happening in their life, and it's always an interesting story. I almost want to write a book about it, their stories, and so I'm sure with you, maybe through Uber or cabs or anything, but the other thing I wanted to highlight is right, more of your backstory, like you're a pretty global citizen in a way, right? I mean, you didn't just stay in America, you've traveled and things like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think these things are really interconnected for me.
Mm,
I am drawn to people far away, because their lives too are interesting, just like the Uber drivers, right? I mean, I love that you have those conversations, right?
right.
That you're actually able to spend every day or every contact with an appreciation of the intricacy
Mm,
and wonder of someone else's life. And I think that that's special, that you actually either see that value, or pause to take it in, because it's easy not to. It's easy for all of us not to.
mm.
And yeah, I think when busyness, or distraction,
Right.
or
So much distraction.
discomfort gets in the way of those conversations, it does lead us to lose something.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
but yeah. I mean, I've been able to work and live in a couple of different places around the globe, and I'm drawn to that for different reasons. But I think that my story starts more locally too. I think
Mm,
it's a real enjoyment and value of other people's lives, and then extending that just not to the people I know, but beyond.
right.
And yeah, I think we all do this to some extent. Um, but I'm really grateful to be part of a few communities that make that more possible, that make that exciting, that make that purposeful.
Right.
And yeah, I hope to continue to find those communities, and participate in them.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, amazing, right? That we were connected,
Right.
never having met in person,
Hmm.
never having been particularly geographically close, always
No.
several states away, and
Yeah.
sometimes continents.
Continents. Yeah.
But this is the world we live in, where
Yeah.
where human connection is possible, and we certainly can have more human connection and more geographically distant human connection now. But I think we have to take a pause as a society and think about what the quality, or depth of the human connection that we want is, and how do we build a lifestyle around that.
Yeah, absolutely. And even this conversation we're having right now, you're in Boston right now, and I'm in Boulder. So just the fact that this is taking place, this is the time and age we live in, back to just the gratitude thing, it's like just technology, with the fact that with an iPhone, I mean, I'm talking to you now on my laptop, but with an iPhone with my data, I was at a Starbucks in Pearl Street in downtown Boulder, and while I was drinking my coffee, I was talking to a friend of mine from the Philippines, and like just the
Yeah.
fact that I could do that, like that's like magic to me, and incredible, just absolutely incredible. And I could show her what Boulder looks like and everything, it's really cool. It's really cool. I mean, yeah, totally with human connection and technology and everything. And so you're mentioning communities. What are some of those communities that you've become part of, and have kind of changed your life?
Yeah. Oh man. A great question. Communities that changed my life. I mean, I would say, for me, it started at home, right? What I could see going on around me. It started with my friends' homes. It started with running into people on the streets who were living very different lives, and maybe even a growing to see that their lives weren't so different after all, that they might seem so different. And then, you thrust into different environments, both in grade school and college, afterwards, feeling a sense of movement, of energy, of excitement about living, through the lens of other people's passions. And I think, more specifically, some of the impactful communities as an undergraduate for me were ones that either dove deep into the abstract, wondering about what that might like, or the kind of direct service, right? How do you actually engage with people who are in need in ways that are authentic, but also productive and helpful? And for me, I did some peer counseling as an undergraduate. And as a group, we had a room that stayed open overnight. We'd take overnight shifts, and anyone could stop by between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. or call on the phone and talk about what was on their mind.
Great.
And wow, I mean, just the appreciation I gained of the intricacy of everyday life.
Right.
That all of these strangers that I'd pass must have through these intimate, vulnerable conversations was really eye-opening to me. I mean, that inspired me to believe what should be obvious, which is that every person around me has this whole web of just life that's often so easy to ignore from outside. And so I think I resolved that I didn't want to ignore that. And we had a lot of conversation within this group about, what are the ways that we want to have these conversations? What does it mean to truly listen? What are our goals in supporting and accompanying someone else through whatever their life circumstance, relatable or otherwise, may be? And I think that a similar discourse, though with a somewhat different purpose, took place at the community I found at the homeless shelter, that student-run homeless shelter that we have at Harvard. It's a place where you'd encounter folks who are otherwise ignored, walked by. Of course. And I think that, again, to appreciate that these are human beings who, have a story, have a life, have joys and passions, even if there are certain constraints or hardships that they face in their lives. And I think, again, like those conversations, those relationships were helpful in transforming what was an interest and curiosity about the people I was immediately connected to into a more global appreciation for other people's lives. And then, it's a few steps away, but related for me that, hey, I want that for everyone. Like every human being who walks the earth should have the opportunity to live life in these amazing and beautiful ways. And that's more possible when you're healthy. That's more possible when you're not poor. And we can do something about that from the outside. I'm not saying that we're going to build these beautiful relationships with all of these people all over the world, but maybe we can make that possible, right? For someone to live longer and have a better relationship with their neighbor or their son or their daughter, right? I mean, that's just wonderfully valuable, not because we care about the number of lives saved or the number of DALYs averted, right? It's I mean, that's a helpful proxy, and it might help us understand where we can be most effective or use our resources best. But at the end of the day, that matters because these human lives matter. Yeah. And the opportunities they have for meaningful pursuits are real, even if they're far away.
Yeah, I just on the topic, you covered so much there. That was beautiful. But on the subject of homelessness, that's something that touched me profoundly in DC, where it's like huge wealth inequality, right? You're on one block, it's super wealthy of these, very successful and powerful politicians and bankers, and then you walk one block down and it's just like totally different atmosphere, right? And so I would go out of my way to talk to homeless people. I didn't have money, so I would just talk to them, and they would be disappointed at first, naturally, but I would learn about them, and probably the most interesting story I had real quick on homelessness is it was the night before Trump's inauguration. So just weird environment. You see army officials, officers, they didn't know what was going to happen. This is history in the making, right? And it was late at night, and I see this homeless woman carrying pretty much all of her belongings, way too much for one person to carry. It's cold, it's 1 a.m. I decide, okay, I should help her, obviously. So I go to help her. I tell her, I'm like, okay, where's the closest bus? Where are you going? Because you're obviously going somewhere, you're not sitting. And so I walked her with her stuff to a bus, right? And at the end, she asked for some money. I turn around and in my wallet, I gave her $20. And as she was going into the bus, there's another homeless person there who saw me give the $20, right? Whose eyes lit up. So I'll never forget this as long as I live. She comes up to me, sticks her hand in front of me without saying anything, and says, "My turn." And I was like, no, that's not how it works. I'm not a bank, first of all. And secondly, like that entitlement. I'm like, you're already coming from warmth. This other homeless woman I helped was in the cold with all her shit. You were in warmth, I assume, in some shelter. Obviously, she was better dressed even than the other homeless person. And you know what's like the worst part? I see in some bag she's holding a Kindle. And I'm like, okay, like if you're really hungry, like the first thing you should do is sell the Kindle, It was just like, I felt like it was very dishonest. And I also realized that greed we usually attribute to the 1% or Wall Street, but I realized it happens at all levels and all backgrounds. And it's like, greed is a very, I think, contagious thing. And, I don't know this woman's story. She could have been hungry, but this idea of just putting her hand on saying, I get some because the other person did, without asking who I am or any context, I was so blown away by that, and then I went home. But it was just very bizarre, the whole thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, just to reflect on that a bit, I mean, I'm sorry to the extent to which that was frustrating or discouraging,
right.
Especially where your goal was to be able to have this human contact, these authentic, even transient interactions, relationships with people. I mean, I think I am hesitant to harp on kind of the lesson that might be obvious in the story, which is that not everyone needs your help as much as everyone else.
Sure.
Because I think it is just so hard to know from the outside.
Of course.
And it's hard to know what goes into that. It's hard to know, what we see as entitlement, where that really comes from, and to what extent that really affects someone's true need or desert of the help we can give.
Right.
And obviously, it doesn't make you feel better when someone's rude or seems entitled. I mean, I hear what you're saying, right? At the other side, it's so hard to know whether that's sufficient cause to not help, right?
Yeah.
And even these kinds of paradoxes of poverty, right? Even to see someone who's apparently without a home, who is at the point of asking other people for money. The fact that that she has a Kindle is bewildering to some, right?
It's confusing.
Yet on the other side of things, I mean, it's bewildering to any of us that we have a Kindle or that. Right? I mean, I think that it's frustrating when it feels like from the outside people aren't optimizing the resources that they have. Yet at the same time, these are desires for the world that we all have. Like, another read of that story is, wow, I would have perhaps judged this person asking me for money as perhaps uncurious or uneducated. And wow, this woman who's out here asking for money is reading on a Kindle. I mean, she loves to read. And she values that more than security of tomorrow's dinner.
Maybe
right?
It's possible.
That's kind of marvelous in its own way. So I guess having seen a lot of these apparent paradoxes from the outside, I think we have to be slow to judge, and that doesn't mean that we have to be ignorant of where the money that we might give someone actually goes to improving their lives. I mean, it's not to say we shouldn't look for ways to use our resources well, but I think we shouldn't be quick to judge either.
Yeah, that's true.
And
that's a good point.
For a short read on some of the mindset that I think can be helpful here, I point you to David Foster Wallace's "This is Water" speech. He gave a
Oh,
commencement
I've
address
listened to
in
it.
Kenya.
I've listened to it. I love that
Uh,
speech. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. And I mean, he's of course not the only person who's thought about these things, but he has
No.
a particular way of expressing these
Oh
ideas,
yeah.
which is this hermeneutic of generosity.
Yeah.
It's what does it take to really embody non-judgment, or
Mm.
to kind of always systematically uh, give people the benefit of the doubt as a show and expression and experience of compassion. And what does that do for you too? Um, so definitely strong recommend for a listen or a read.
Yeah.
And not to
Absolutely.
judge you too. I mean, I think you have a really normal reaction of kind of outrage to, oh
Right.
my gosh, this person is demanding money from me, and I don't even know if
Yeah.
she's going to use it better than the next person.
Right.
That's really tough.
It's
The
tough.
way I come down on that is one, to think about, okay, well, is giving money the best way I can help, or where can I give my money in the best
Yes.
ways?
Hmm.
But also always with kind of a recognition that at the end of the day, she can probably still use my money better than
Oh,
I can.
sure.
There
And
might just be the
yeah.
other more thoughtful ways I can put that money,
Yeah.
but
The
it's
other
not the choice between her and me. It's the choice between her and someone who really might need it even more.
Right. And the other element of the story is I only had one $20 bill. I didn't even have
Right.
dollars to give, and I'm not gonna go to like an ATM. Yeah. So, anyways, you brought up a
Yeah.
lot of good points, and the other element to this, and you've done research, I think, into and thought about certainly, is the mental illness piece and how many homeless people are mentally ill, and it's like they could be well fed and have money, but it's like if you have paranoid schizophrenia, it's like a whole different ballgame, and you can't see that from the outside. I mean, you could see symptoms maybe of psychosis, but for the most part, we don't know. A lot of them also didn't have families, or good families, and they could have had drug addictions and things like that. But at the end of the day, you're right. With our imperfect information, I don't know anything about that woman's life except for that experience I had with her. Who knows what she's going through? So it's like, what do we do with that imperfect information? I wish more
Yeah.
people would have conversations with homeless people and not see it as this us versus them, mentality.
Yeah.
I got that from the book Behave by Robert Sapolsky. I think I referenced it in the last podcast, but it was very profound to me. And one of his chapters is us versus them. It's totally tribal, conservatives versus liberals, immigrants versus non-immigrants, this country versus that country. It's everywhere. And I think one of the biggest forms of us versus them is who is normal, in quotes, and who is insane or who is crazy, whatever that means, a very broad term and can be derogatory. So, maybe you could speak a bit about, I don't know, things you've thought about with mental illness or mental health, and things like that.
Yeah. I definitely want to go there, but can I pause and ask you a question first?
Yes.
I mean, I'm really curious.
Right.
I'm curious on behalf of your listeners too. What empowered you or motivated you or inspired you to actually start having those conversations? I mean, the conversations that a lot of us find really difficult to start.
Yes. So I think a lot of it is genetic. My father, I'm like a clone of him. I talked to his best friend recently, and he's like, "You guys are exactly the same. Like, he knew my dad when he was my age. We're the same person." What I love about my dad is, so he's a doctor, and it doesn't matter what your political background is. Like, he's a huge Trump hater. So if he has a Trump supporter come to his clinic, he'll go out of his way to find things they have in common. And he'll listen to them, actually, what their view is, right? And he'll talk to literally anyone. I mean, worse than me. I think, driving my friends crazy during spring break, where I would talk to any stranger, unwarranted or unwarranted, and become friends with everybody. My dad is even worse. He became friends with the guy in the airport because they were reading the New York Times, like a very common newspaper. Yeah. That was enough, So I think his genetics plus watching him as a kid and how he'd interact with people, he's like a masterful networker. If you go to a party with him, he'll literally talk to everybody, and I really love that. And so I got it from him. There's not as many homeless people in Boulder, so I don't do it as much in Boulder. I think they're better taken care of. They still need a lot of help, but I think they're better taken care of in Boulder than in Washington, D.C. Like in Boulder, don't see as many homeless people on the streets. D.C., I see it everywhere. also just proximity, right? The George Washington University, where I went to college, is like right in the heart of DC. It's very close to the White House and the national monuments. So walking to class every day, I'd see homeless people. So it was unavoidable. And when I would see person after person after person, avoid them like the plague almost at times, I just felt compelled to, like, at least I can talk to this person. I remember one said he was a writer. I said, can I buy you a pen and some paper? you know, maybe that will help. I don't know, And one guy made laugh. I said, look, you're talking to the wrong person. Okay, let's strategize this. I said, you see that dorm over there? That's where the people who are paying $60K a year live. You should talk to them. They have money. Let's strategize, a little bit. My favorite thing to change subjects slightly with homeless people is barbers. They would give free haircuts to homeless people, and it would transform their image of themselves. Something that people don't think a lot with homeless people when they give them $1 or $10 or even $100 if you're so generous. Don't necessarily recommend that, but if you do that, something that you can't change with money, I think, is self-identity and self-esteem and confidence, right? And that's what the barber gave them by giving them free haircuts. He would shave their beard consensually and give them a nice haircut, and show them a mirror, and they're like, oh my God, it's like seeing a new person, right? It was extraordinary. I love that. I think the world needs more of that. Because it's like, when people say, oh, a homeless person should just get a job, one of the most heartless comments. It's like, well, first they need a shower, they need better clothes, they need a home, and all these things. It's like, and jobs have gotten significantly harder to get compared to my dad's age. My dad's turning 70, soon. So it's become so much more complicated, the world. And yeah, just very long answer, but yeah, to your question, it's just like, it's there. It's just in Foggy Bottom, Washington, D.C., it's just there. And and it doesn't change. It's the same people I see each day. It's quite sad. But so there you go.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I'm glad, though, that you crossed that chasm and actually were able to have these conversations, right? I mean, I think that's really hard for people. And I don't know. I mean, part of it may be this kind of appearance. Part of it might be just a discomfort. Part of it might be the fear that you have to do more, give more than you're comfortable with. And I admit, we don't stop and talk to strangers who aren't in need all the time either, right? Yeah. We're all living our busy lives. But I do think, it takes a push, but it's a good push to actually go out of your way and make contact, right? To acknowledge the humanity of someone else who's so often ignored and often dehumanized is so valuable. And I'm really glad that you found a way to do that.
Yeah, and to our listeners, I would just say, for those who are more introverted or generally don't talk to strangers, that's how you grow, is being in your discomfort zone, I call it. And it's like, really being out of your comfort zone. And I don't know, for me, maybe I'm just different, but it's just one of the things that give me like the most pleasure. Like some people get dopamine rushes from drugs or sex or other things. For me, it's talking to strangers. I just love it because seeing their eyes light up, especially with older people too, which is common in DC, a lot of musical performers, the same thing. I'll go and talk to them, and it's amazing how much you can even change someone's life if they're really lonely, if you go talk to them. So the loneliness epidemic is huge. So yeah.
Oh, totally with you. I'll digress for a moment to tell you a funny anecdote.
Please, go ahead.
Which is that I was in our school dining hall, and we had a long conversation with my close friends about how distractible I was. And I don't know if we're related, if it's in my genes too or what, but boy, I'm happy to talk to everyone we come across. And my friends trying to have lunch with me were giving me a hard time. Like, hey, what do you think this is? You can't be friends with everyone. We're having lunch right now.
It's like, no, yes, we can.
We can go back to our room. I say, we get to hang out all the time. Not to take them for granted. It's so exciting when I see these people.
Yeah.
Did you read The Prodigal Son? And I am walking through our dorm basement. We're joking around about in the booth, and this phone that's there's a gym. It's in this fenced-in cage of the basement.
Right.
And the phone in the gym rings, and I say, hold on a second. And I pick up the phone, and it's just cream of the crop, right? I want to talk to whoever's willing to talk.
Yeah, I'm the
But
same way. Yeah,
hopefully can channel that into something good.
it's something
Really,
productive,
so.
right? Well,
But yeah, I mean, on the
yeah,
loneliness epidemic, and
right.
definitely to circle back to mental health as well,
Hmm.
we have a long way to go, right? And I think that we can think
Seriously,
about what we need in terms of caregiving, right? And there's a medical model that needs to grow and needs to improve for this, but there's also a human model. There's what do each of us need to do uh, to live in this world that does have different constraints and pressures than the one of even our parents' generation.
right.
And I mean, I think there's also structural interventions that are important too. Right?
Sure.
There are people who are left lonely, who are left uncared for, who are at risk of developing mental illness and distress and impairment that come along with that suffer by the hand of our social structure, right? And
Right.
I mean these are big things to take on, but important ones, right? I mean we're talking about some of the core of our experience of the world.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Oh, there's this moment that happened just last night. It was my mom's 61st birthday, and we were having dinner at a Japanese restaurant, and a couple next to us in a table saw that she was opening presents, and so the restaurant was kind and gave out a free dessert. And so the couple on the other table started singing my mom happy birthday to some strangers we didn't know. And I just love that. There's this human
Yeah.
who is just so enthusiastic to see someone else celebrating their birthday. And I'm like, we need more of that in the world, more people like her, because she just seems, I didn't know her, I didn't talk to her, but she just seems so positive, right? And
Mm.
I just I love looking at that. One thing I was struck by is my friend in the Philippines. There's a lot of poverty in the country, a lot of inequality, but their culture does. I feel like I can't prove this. I'd have to look into the research. I feel like their culture cultivates more positivity than America, even though America is one of like the wealthiest and most free countries. It's like with them, there's a lot of family oriented gatherings. There's a lot of friendships, a lot of positivity and openness with strangers that I think lacks not in America as a whole, but in certain communities, suburbs, right, all that stuff. And it, I really wish this would be seen more as a health emergency. This isolation thing, because it's so strongly correlated with bad mental health and depression and things. And so it's like, why are we isolating ourselves so much? Why has this increased in the past 40 years? What's really going on? So I personally definitely
Yeah.
want to look into that more research wise, but it's just very
Oh,
fascinating.
absolutely. And I mean, what's inspiring is that you do have some prominent people pointing this out, right? I mean, our last Surgeon General, declared that this is actually a public health problem, right?
Yes,
Loneliness, right?
yes, it is.
In the UK, there's been recent advances in the government actually formalizing their response to loneliness, right? I'll leave it to you to get into some of that reading and
Yeah,
just say that although some have seen this as half baked or even controversial, what we're gaining is an awareness of a real problem and the potential inroads that government or policy or systems can actually take to address this. But I mean, I do think that it does vary by culture quite a bit. And one of the things we see in the US is particularly loneliness among the elderly
mm,
and isolation among the elderly. And that is not universal across the globe. Many
right.
people, when they're older, have a different support network that
True.
often relies on the family, and that's just less common here.
Yeah.
And that's not the only thing that's different, but it is one place to start.
Yeah, and on the subject of this is great. On the subject of elderly loneliness, that's what partially inspired the app, I'm developing now, where it's like the idea that someone get challenged to talk to an elderly person for an hour or more if they're inclined, and like they would appreciate that so much. And so personally in my life in this moment, I've been busy between, like the GRE and work and things. But as soon as I'm done with that, which is next Thursday, I do want to volunteer more in my local community. And the two biggest things I think I'd be useful for is because I love to talking to elderly people in retirement homes, and also teaching, children and things like that. Because that's just what I realize gives me a lot of joy, and I'm good at is just talking to people, advising them, or just listening to their stories. In the future with this podcast, I would love to interview older people. That's a market that I don't hear in podcasts at all, and who can tell better stories? You know what I mean? Like why would I not want to have like 100-year-old go to them? Obviously, they wouldn't come here or Skype with them and like hear what it was like a century ago after World War One. I mean, like those kind of stories. It's just like could you imagine being 100 and seeing the progress in the world from 1918 to 2018?
I'm optimistic. I'm hoping I make it that far.
That's what I'm hoping. I want to make it to 107, so I lived through 3 centuries because I was born in '94. But I'll keep dreaming that. But no. So, anyways,
I'm excited to see where your app goes.
Yeah.
It'll be really neat to see.
I mean, for those listening, it's just the app will be called I Challenge You. I have no idea when it'll be released. I'm looking for funding at this moment, but in any case, definitely something I'm passionate about. I think if you go to my LinkedIn or whatever, you can find out more about it. But anyways, while I have you here, moving on to the next question. That was great. We went through so many topics. What excites or fascinates you? Which I know is like super broad. You can take that any way you like. Maybe it's something that's exciting you now that you discovered recently, but it can be anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think on a personal day-to-day level, it's like, how do you build the attitude of excitement, right? How do you find the joy in the minutia?
Yes, that's the key.
That's everyone's task in some respect, and I mean, oftentimes it's like based on having good friends, or it's based on finding curious, different pockets of this funny little planet we live on, and learning more. So I mean, that's exciting. It's the everyday update on my friend's life.
That's awesome.
But more broadly, I think it's amazing the inroads we have on problems that were previously seen as almost intractable. And I think I want to be part of that. I want to push us over the edge where either we haven't had the kind of moral intuition that the problem is important enough, or the technological intuition that we can actually develop a solution, or the systems in place to actually deliver such solutions. And it's exciting to see so many examples where we've been able to do the impossible and improve people's lives along the way.
Yeah.
And I think, aligned, and I did want to circle around to what you're asking about my interest in mental illness. I mean, there have been some unbelievable advances in the hope that we should have for anyone who's suffering with psychological distress.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's still huge gaps, right?
Course, yeah.
I mean, the best that we have isn't good enough. The best that we have isn't accessible to the people who need it the most. And the people who need it the most, who have access to the best that we have, don't always want to get it because for some reason or another, it doesn't work for them. And so our system's really broken. I mean, our society's really broken in that we haven't figured out how to prevent and then treat mental illness. But there's just, on the other side of those gaps, or the lining of the gap. Okay, so let's say the gap is some sort of cylindrical,
nice.
Paper tunnel. I mean, look at the lining of that.
Yeah.
That's the opportunity, right?
Right.
How do you actually build that lining with solutions, right? And I think that we're getting there. And that's what's exciting.
Yeah.
Right? You see, in a lab that I worked in, they're developing an app that just by playing a game on an app on your cell phone, they saw remarkable decreases in self-injury. Right?
Yeah.
Whoa! Computer games have never been so powerful. I've just been learning more about. I don't know if you're familiar with the organization Strong Minds, but they're scaling up interpersonal group therapy over Uganda and hopefully into surrounding countries in the near future. At massive and unprecedented scale. I mean, we don't know anyone else who's doing this, and people. There's a lot of reasons why people don't take action. There's a lot of excuses that lead us to inaction. There's missing information or missing drive or a lacking kind of political will to take action when we know it will work. But I think what we have now are these exemplar optimism generating projects. Right. I mean, I work with partners in health whose whole model is based off of that. Do the impossible, rethink, reimagine global health, right? And I mean, some key examples, some huge wins, right? We're saying that multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, which affected people that the rest of the world was ready to give up on. It was just not going to be cost effective enough or possible enough to actually care for these patients. And they were just going to be the ones who died. Partners in Health said, no way. That doesn't make any sense. You have Jim Kim, who's now the president of the World Bank, who's finding out that these drugs that are off patent aren't even being produced in generic form, right? When you look at cost effectiveness and you say, well, we just can't do it. It's too expensive. Right. Not only do you fail to care about the person's life who's affected, but you're also not getting the true cost. And so these guys were able to show to the rest of the global health community that we can actually treat drug-resistant tuberculosis, and you better do it because these people's lives matter.
Yeah.
And these people are able to, these people, if they're untreated, aren't just going to suffer alone, but the people around them are going to be infected. And people didn't want to believe this. People didn't want to believe that drug-resistant tuberculosis could actually spread person to person. People didn't want to believe that you could actually be successful in treating people. People said, oh, they're going to die anyway. You can throw in all the drugs you want at them. But that's just not the case, right? So they re-envisioned and reimagined what global health can do by being an example of breaking down those barriers. Right. And they played a strong role. I mean, if you look at PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, unprecedented investment in global health that just, you can't fathom the impact that it's had to actually say that, oh, yeah, those people who are dying on the other side of this ocean that, we have here between us and the rest of the world. Wow, on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, there are all these people who are also dying of AIDS. Their lives matter too, huh? Yeah, we should probably make the treatments that we want for our neighbors and friends and brothers and sisters. That should be available to people in Africa, people in Asia, people in South America, right? And this is a revolutionary idea from a U.S. policy perspective, and it's had huge implications for what's possible in imagining, what the world can have and how the world can grow. So, I mean, that's what gets me excited, right? It gets me excited to see we can tip that pendulum in the right direction. And even when it comes swinging back, know that with the right direction, we can actually do good.
Yes.
So I'm super excited to see that kind of advance. And sure. I'm thinking big. I want to understand how I can be a part of that.
Yeah.
Whether that means
no doubt.
Setting an example for not giving up on people and finding the ways to do that that work within our current systems, or to change these systems, right? To reflect greater compassion, reflect a better, true valuation of human lives without concern for borders or distance or race or creed or anything else. I mean, this is what excites me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just thinking, something I'm very passionate about is education. I'm wondering, it's like, how can we teach children to have that spark that you have? Like that excitement to be like, okay, there's all these problems in the world, but like there's so many ways and angles we can approach this to solve it. And like there's so much happening right now. You're right. And it's like, if I'm browsing mindlessly through Facebook or even the New York Times, like a lot of this stuff isn't being out there in the mainstream news. I mean, sometimes it is, but a lot of times, like a lot of these initiatives, like Strong Mind you just mentioned, and many of the things you're working on, like if I wasn't friends with you on Facebook where you post these things, I wouldn't really know, And it's like, okay, this information needs to come out to the mainstream for sure. Okay, people need to shut up about Trump just for a little bit so we can talk about these problems in the world and these solutions. Like that's the thing they're talking about. Just the apps you mentioned are so incredible. I remember, I think one of the last times we talked on the phone, we were talking about apps to help with different mental disorders, and it's like, it's all there. Like there's so much that can be solved. And it's like, but man, if you go to a high school or middle school or elementary school, it's like what they're being taught and what the world needs there's a huge gap, and to creative and critical thinking. And it's like, a lot of kids in traditional school systems, at least public schools, I can only speak in America, that's because that's where I was educated, like it's a model that's pretty old. We've been using it for a long time in America, and it doesn't work for a lot of people. It works for a small subset. I would be included. I assume you do too, because you went to Harvard and all that. It works for some type of student, but for most, they're left in the dust. Everyone learns at a different pace. And it's like, why isn't there a class on enthusiasm? Like, here's all these problems in the world. Here's all these great organizations that are doing work about it. Here's how you can get involved. It's like, no, education needs to get updated in the 21st century, and so that's something I would want to work on. But just hearing you go off, it's like, it's so inspiring, because a lot of these organizations you mentioned, I've not heard of.
Yeah, well, and I think that what we need is to put examples that inspire hope in front of people who are either passive, who are having a hard time engaging with the world actively, or finding their pursuits meaningful, right? Or people who have lost that hope, right? I mean, I think it is easy and relatable to most of us to be at these times of despair, right? And I think that this is true across fields, right? But to say that when you're struggling, when life is really hard, to have examples of hope, right? People who have made it through that, to say, hey, actually, all of the challenges that we just mentioned, right? Like, there's actually still a good way to get better, to live better, right? People need that message, and I think it doesn't get sung enough, right? It's easy to get lost in despair, and it's also easy to get lost in ambivalence. And I think that when you're young, yeah, I'd love a class in enthusiasm, right?
I'll teach
it. Curiosity, and there's some systematic approaches that have been taken to work with what's called social and emotional learning. But at the base, that's kind of every teacher's challenge, and many do it very well, is to kind of inspire curiosity, inspire enthusiasm.
Yeah, it's so important.
I think what we see, it's not that everyone is going to be by nature, optimally or maximally enthusiastic about everything they do, and we wouldn't expect that, and that would be weird. And I don't think society works that way, right? But what we do see that's damning are the constraints our society puts on people's curiosity and inspiration, on their seeking purpose, right? Because if your choice is to engage in the activities that help you seek purpose, connect with the world and find meaning, or be coerced into activities that become necessary for your social inclusion, for your financial stability, for just getting by the next day, then it's those constraints that we really ought to target, right? And I mean, some of those constraints are imposed by a structure that perpetuates poverty, right? Not everyone does have access to as good public education. I happened to get really good public school district, and that meant that I had different opportunities ahead of me than I might have if I lived elsewhere, right?
Absolutely.
And the people who are working in the areas where the resources are poorest are often doing the best that they can do.
Yeah.
And some of them are even some of the best people, right? But at the end of the day, if their students are facing different constraints than you and I, that we can improve upon, I mean, that should be our goal. That's the purpose of policy. That's the purpose of these moral movements to change the society we live in. And I think that a lot of that, but not all of it, comes to income inequality and the constraints of poverty. But some of it comes to lacking opportunities to grow and develop. I mean, our liberal arts college education system that something like half of the American population has access to is in some ways a huge advance towards this. Right? We give everyone permission to wonder if they can afford to get that kind of education, and that's what they want. But even there, the opportunities are so unequal, either because of the financial burden that it places on people who can't afford that kind of education, or because the quality of the education is so varied, right? And what I would want to know is, one, there may be a case for making college education more accessible. I also recognize there are many proponents of putting on the brakes there and saying, well, actually, it may not be good to create a society where everyone needs a college education or has to bear that cost. So I mean, I understand that there's some debate to be had there, but then also to raise the quality of the education that people are putting their work and energy and time and money into.
Right.
So we, really leverage that opportunity to do what seems purposeful and meaningful. And I think a lot of the times the best kind of social and personal investment are when you can structure your meaningful pursuits, when your curiosity can be directed towards something that actually makes the world a better place. And I say that without judgment about what does or doesn't make the world a better place, but just to have that in our minds, right? How can I do what I love while contributing to something greater? And how can I shape those passions to work around where I can do something good?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. That was fantastic. I had there was something I wanted to say. I forget. Oh man, I totally forgot what it was. No, that was a lot of great content right there.
No, I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything really. I mean,
Oh
and I
yes.
understand they're true experts in all of these topics
Oh yeah.
who I hope have
Right.
more refined and
Yeah.
thoughtful suggestions as to how we get there.
Right. Oh, I just
I'm
remembered.
excited.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
So, for those listening or discouraged by higher education in the United States, how expensive it is, um, I love the quote by Mark Twain that says, "Don't let schooling get in the way of your education."
Mhm.
We're living in a time where it's never been, I think, more accessible and easier to learn for free. So using YouTube, using Khan Academy, using edX, Coursera, all these things, Coursera, I think, all these things. I just looked online, like there's a Harvard edX where for free you can learn about literally anything. You can learn about developing economies, you can learn about neuroscience with simulation, you can learn about poker strategies, the psychology of poker, literally anything. And how they make their money is either through donations or you can pay to get a certificate. But it's like that to me is the future and is now becoming the present where, okay, you spend all that tuition money to get the degree and use that to get a job. But it's like, what I love about these online courses that are free is like you can learn at your own pace. And from the ones that I've listened to, obviously some are better than others. I found them to be more engaging than many of the lectures I had in college. I've had great professors, don't get me wrong, and that experience person to person was invaluable and irreplaceable. But for those struggling financially, really look into these resources. It won't get you a degree, but it can help you build an education. I've been blown away by that. So, like in my life, I'm taking a bit of a detour from economics into neuroscience, and then fuse that together to study neuroeconomics. Okay, great. I didn't take any biology in college, and I don't know anything about neuroscience. What do I do? Well, there's these free neuroscience courses. There's neuro textbooks I can get on Amazon for $20, and I can just teach myself. And I know I might be in a minority. I consider myself kind of an autodidact. I just have this motivation, and that's one problem many people have is motivation and things like that. But I don't think enough people are aware of these resources that are out there that are free. So I just wanted to highlight that.
I think highlighting those is really valuable for those who are in the position, and probably many of your listeners,
Right.
are in a position where
Yes.
they have time. They have time to listen to your podcast. Shut this off. Stop listening to us. I mean, I don't know anything. You might, but hey, like go learn something really valuable.
Yes,
So
yes.
I think a lot of people are in that position. I think you asked an even harder question though, which is how do you build that motivation? How do you build that interest? How do you build that
Seriously.
curiosity?
So tough. Yeah.
Enthusiasm. I mean, I think more and more the science is saying you got to start really early, right? And
Yeah.
if we're looking at how to build policy around that looks like something in schools.
Yeah.
If you're trying to learn, how to be a good parent, you might have a totally different set of questions in front of you, right?
Yeah.
These are not easy things to crack.
Of course not.
If I had to decide right now how to raise a kid so that they became curious, I don't know where I'd even begin. Right? And so I think these are challenges that we're, we as a society are facing at various levels of granularity. But it's not clear if this is always the discussion. So maybe when we are at that point, if we get there, if we have kids, we'll at least have started this conversation. So, I guess it would be nice for my kid if they were curious or enthusiastic about something.
Yeah. Actually,
Anybody,
Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysicist, he got that question. They're like, "How can I make my child like you're building it? It's a human being, it's a living organism. How do I make my child more curious, more scientifically curious?" And he said, "Get out of their way. Don't force it. Definitely don't force it." He says, "Just leave a pair of binoculars just lying around, or a microscope, and just let them interact with it however they will, and let them look around with it." Because science at the root of it is curiosity. And I would argue a lot of people have curiosity. Maybe they're just not tapping into it. And also from a neuroscience perspective, maybe some people's brains are just structured differently, where some are more curious than others. I find that to be my main asset is my curiosity. I want to read about everything. I want to learn about everything. And just recently I was analyzing my life, just looking at what I spend day to day, and it's like when I'm not studying for the GRE or working, I'm either reading a book or listening to an intellectual podcast like Sam Harris's podcast, or watching a TED Talk, or watching a YouTube with these guys. It's just intellectual stimulation after stimulation after stimulation, almost probably to an unhealthy degree, but it's like that's just my default state. And I think I get that from my parents. My dad and mother are both curious people and well-read. But how to teach that, I don't know. I really don't know, because I've observed it with some of my friends. I've observed it in society, in places where a lot of people just aren't as curious. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can still live a fulfilling life and have a good family and be a good neighbor and build a good community. But curiosity, it's at the root of discovery. It's at the root of pioneers who've transformed society. Like, if you want to change the world, you have to be curious. I mean, or else how can you change anything, if you're not probing and being like, I'm just reminded of this quote: "Most scientific discoveries didn't come from saying eureka, like a flashbulb moment where we think of a genius like Einstein. It came from a scientist saying, that wasn't supposed to happen." Like, it comes from failure. It's like, oh my God, I was trying to test this hypothesis and that blew that out of the water. Let's explore this. And they're like, oh shit. And then you discover penicillin or whatever, oversimplifying. But my point is like, also teaching the importance of failure. Obviously Silicon Valley is good on this. They advocate, failing forward, fail fast, and then just keep going. But with a lot of subjects like math and education, people think, oh, you're either good at it or you're not, right? And it's like, no, it can be learned like any skill, and it requires a lot of trial and error and failure, and I understand why most people are very adverse to failure and they don't want to face it, but as any entrepreneur, inventor, scientist especially knows, it's inevitable. It's part of the process, So it's like, how do you build resiliency?
Go on, sorry.
Oh, and how do you build resiliency to that? That was just the last thing.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things, and recently there was a meta-analysis, and people are interpreting its results in different directions. But one of the most inspiring books on the topic I read was Mindset, Carol Dweck.
Yes, I love that TED Talk, yeah.
The basic premise is that if you can adopt a growth mindset, that is one that is process-oriented when evaluating where how well you've done, that's resilient to failure because you learn from that and improve your process, and that rewards the process that led to success, so that you again take a similar process, but rather than, on the other hand, a fixed mindset in which you see what happens in the world to just be evidence of the kind of person that you are, the things that you're good at and the things you're bad at, and the way you'll always be. That fixed mindset's very, very dangerous.
Oh,
and it's very,
absolutely.
very common.
Yes.
And if we can adopt that growth mindset, and there are some ways, in fact, you can, in some kind of fun ways that you can, and some funny stories that can help you get there. I mean, it's amazing how much people respond to what are not even necessarily incorrect, but very, very superficial handlings of neuroplasticity. Like the notion that you can actually change the strengths of the connections in your brain, the way your brain is wired, in common parlance, right?
It's important to use the common parlance.
that we have this neuroplasticity that that we can actually change the way our brains work is really powerful to people and
very
actually
empowering.
changing their attitudes about the kind of person they can be and the kinds of things they can be good at. And so, if anything, I encourage you, if you're looking to become more curious or more enthusiastic, to say, hey, I can actually do something about this, right? I can actually take action. I have this kind of agency and opportunity to change how curious I am. And you can do that by process. You can expose yourself to different things that will make you curious. You can have conversations, push yourself to have conversations with people who are really into something you don't care about.
Exactly.
And figure out what it would take to care. I mean, it's a hard lever to push. And maybe it's an easier lever to push when we're younger, but all hope is not lost. I mean, you and I and everyone else who's listening can actually do something here. And the questions of how might be more individual, but the questions of if are certain. You can.
Yeah, and not only that, I'm so glad you brought that up. I love the growth versus fixed mindset, because I had a friend of mine, I'll leave anonymous, and he was a roommate of mine in college, and he had a very fixed mindset. I mean, so fixed that, it usually was with social situations, so with relationships, and then with friends, he's like, oh, I just attract drama. Drama is inevitable in my life. I'm like, well, if you believe it's inevitable, yeah, it's definitely inevitable, right? Like, if you just expect drama to always happen, and then I found out later he was also contributing to it, then it will keep happening, right? But like, the power of the mind to be like, okay, I've had a lot of drama in the past 3 months. What are some little things I can do to maybe minimize that, or maybe curtail that a little bit? Am I doing anything? I think that's a hard thing for people to ask. It's easy to say what everyone else in your social circle, everyone in the community, everyone in this country is doing wrong, but to actually look at yourself in the mirror and be like, what am I doing wrong? What can I improve on? This idea of continuous improvement, I think, is so important, which goes hand in hand with the growth mindset. But I'm really, really glad you brought that up, because it's supremely important.
Yeah, no, and I think the healthiest and most helpful ways to frame our success and failures require a bit of training, right? I mean, this is the way that I think even as young adults, or maybe I'm particularly immature, we can mature the way that we respond to these successes and failures. And I think, to start from, as we started this conversation, the principle of gratitude for the opportunities and proclivities that we have, right? But then also the opportunities we have going forward. And to say, when we failed, not to blame ourselves, right? Not to become so self-critical, but rather to understand how we can take as it is what's already happened and learn from it, right? And this is not something new. This is probably what your parent told you a long time ago. How do you learn from your mistakes and from your failures? But to actually say, okay, let me break that down. And before making any judgment about the kind of person I am, or what I'm good at or bad at, or how much this confirms my preconception of such, to say, how can I be a little bit better at this? How could I do a little bit better leading up to the next opportunity to perform or to put into action whatever it is that you've just done? And I think that is really hard, because it can feel demoralizing when we failed at something we care about. And it can be easy to blame ourselves when we start taking a critical look at that process. But if you can get beyond that and say, instead of blaming myself, I want to do the best I can to do better next time. That can go a long way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh, all that is fantastic. And no, it's great, because just in this fluid conversation we had, you actually covered many of my questions. So that was great. One I wanted to ask you while we still have time is, where are you now, and where would you like to be in 10 years, if you can conceptualize that at all? Like, tell the audience what your age is, and what's going on.
Sure. Yes. So I'm 23 now. I missed a pretty exciting project that is at a fulcrum, at a turning point, I should say. Right now, we're up for review for we're hoping to be considered for a GiveWell incubation grant. That means that we've designed a charity startup based on iron fortification in India, so preventing anemia by adding micronutrients to staple foods. And we're hoping that we can get the funding to have massive impact. We think, we actually have a platform that might allow us to contribute to preventing tens to hundreds of thousands of cases of anemia, which is a huge deal. So that's been really exciting. It's been neat to jump into this charity entrepreneurship space. It's been neat to engage with different communities and different approaches to doing something good in the world and doing something good from a global health standpoint. 10 years from now, I think I want to have more of a mix in my everyday life or every week life. I love the opportunities to have these large scale projects going on. Dream up the biggest impact you can have, and then make it happen. That's really exciting. It's also hard on a day-to-day level to organize that time to yes. make sure you're using it well, to withstand the successes and failures innate to these higher risk projects. And so that I hope is part of my career. I hope I have some sort of entrepreneurial, outward-looking piece. But I think I also hope that I'm seeing patients as a clinician. I hope that I'm teaching students and preparing others to join what's a hugely impressive field that's set out to make the world a better place. And I think we can learn a lot. We can do a lot together, and want to be part of the community that can make that happen.
That's awesome. And thank you. No, thank you for the work you're doing. Seriously, because, I think it was a little over a year ago, I joined Effective Altruism, and that's how we met. And, I just wanted to let the listeners know more about that community, right? Because I know you're active in it and I'm active in it. And anyone I believe can join it. I mean, the idea is that it's like, how can we do the most good? It's kind of almost a philosophical question. But one thing I did to become a member was do the Giving What We Can pledge, where you pledge to give a certain percentage of your future income to the most effective charities, which was determined largely by the organization GiveWell that you mentioned, Brendan, you mentioned earlier. And I actually hope to work for GiveWell this summer, doing economic research for them and really determining, okay, what are the most cost-effective charities? What are the most neglected areas? I'm doing that a little bit with my current job as a consultant with charities, but the piece about like neglected is so important, because it's like, okay, the natural disasters, those attracted a lot of attention. That happened in Texas and then in Puerto Rico last year is super important. But then there's been all sorts of natural disasters that don't get any media coverage, and that's like a whole separate issue. But it's a tough philosophical question to say what are the most important problems. For me, what stand out is preventable diseases in children in sub-Saharan Africa, because they're preventable, right? It's like there's a difference between funding money for research for cancer versus providing bed nets for mosquitoes, for malaria, that are provenly effective, and that doesn't mean we should stop our research on cancer. By all means, no. But maybe a better use of that money would be funding better education for future neurosurgeons or neuroscientists or doctors versus just funding. And maybe, right, we should take care of this malaria thing, because, Bill Gates has done a lot of work on it, but I don't think people realize how much their dollar goes to that kind of thing, and how valuable it is to contribute. And so, anyways.
And I think that, the shift in thinking, if this effective altruism notion or these ideas are new ones, isn't that these things or the people they serve don't matter, but rather that your incremental contribution to these movements for good can sometimes go farther in the places you'd least expect, or the places you don't even yet know. And so GiveWell's tried to take a systematic look at, well, where can your small but significant contribution go the farthest? And a lot of that has to do with what is just neglected, what we're missing out on, who's most vulnerable, and how can we reach them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I just heard somebody come into the house. Just one last question I want to ask you to wrap up. This has been really great. I wish I had more time. That was my fault. But last question. What I always ask people at the end: what are the most memorable words of advice you ever received in your life? And it can be from absolutely anyone. I'm just curious.
Ooh, man,
This is a tough one, I know. And you've had such an extraordinary life already. I know you'll continue to do great things in the future, but there must have been some sort of mentor. I mean, or there could have been many, but I'm just very curious.
Be kind.
That's what my first guest said. Those same words. The exact same words. I love it. It's important.
Well, tried and true. At least two of us have taken it.
I love it that you said that independently.
Try and take it seriously. But no, be kind, be connected, be engaged. When you're approaching ambivalence, as we all do, figure out how you can plug yourself back in, who you can talk to, who will spark you on the next leg of your journey. And when you meet people along the way, whether they're people who are telling you what to do, your friends, or people you're trying to serve, be kind.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I think those are great words to end on. I wish I've had more time. I'll definitely have you back soon, but thank you for giving me your time and being on the round table. I really appreciate it, man.
Total pleasure. Would love to continue chatting about all of these ideas.
Oh, absolutely. We could go on forever. All right. So I'll just stop it here.